Welcome to DNF. This is a Formula One podcast, and in my opinion, the best Formula One podcast because it's the only one with Jessica Smetana. I am Spencer Hall, but the important part is Jessica right over there. Jessica, how we doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. I feel like I might be the only person on the planet who enjoyed the race this past weekend, so I'm
Hmm.
excited to talk about that with you and with our guest.
That's it. Jessica Smetana, also fan of Formula One and paint drying. Big fan of paint drying, tectonic shifts, and other very slow, predictable processes. We could just beat around the bush here, but we're going to go ahead and elevate the show. That's what we do. We make what we do even better by inviting quality guests on. There is no more quality guest on the planet right now than Nate Saunders. It is the year of Nate. I'm just going to bring you up to speed on Nate. Nate writes for ESPN. Occasionally, he does digital television with me and a couple of other people on Formula One races. And this is the year of Nate. Nate has watched a football match with Ed Sheeran. Nate covers the globe, just globetrotting around, fattening the frequent flyer miles and destroying the world's environment, but with his massive carbon footprint. It's him and Taylor Swift. And in addition to that, his football team in that football match was promoted to the EPL. And in the pre-show, we got to hear Nate say a phrase, which was, "My camera broke on the way back from Nice." So just connect all of those things, and you'll see that this is the most glamorous year in the already glamorous life of Nate Saunders, Formula One writer, expert, and bon vivant. How are you, Nate?
I'm good, dude. You've made me hate myself from that intro.
Dude,
If I listened to someone get introed like that, I'd be like, "Who is this guy? I don't want anything to do with him."
it's
Um,
you. That's you. These are all factual statements about
yeah,
you, and they're fabulous. The
no, I
glamour is
appreciate it, and
undeniable.
yeah, and I have to say, I mean, there's so much there. I was like, wow, it really is the year of Nate. Maybe it really is. But I do really want to get into that because I have never heard anyone say they enjoyed that race. I've talked to a lot of people over the past 24 hours, and I was actually stunned. I thought maybe that was a gag. So I'm really excited to get into that. But yeah, really excited just generally to talk about this because I think it's, obviously a big talking point. But yeah, no, great to be on with you guys.
Can we talk about Ed Sheeran first? So you watched
Of course.
what was your team again? Ipswich?
Ipswich, yeah, very good.
Okay,
Good.
okay, got
And
it.
so they have been kind of on, in hard times recently. They were in the Premier League when I was a kid, got relegated in 2002, and then they got relegated again in 2018. So they were, down in the third level. We got some new owners, and then Ed Sheeran, who is from Ipswich, kind of bought into the club as well, and we wear his tour on our shirts. So we basically just like massive Ed Sheeran super fans whenever you wear the kit. And then yeah, I don't know which version of the story you want. I've told it many times. I've got good at telling
You
it very, very quickly.
tell us like we've briefly kind of I think discussed it after the Miami race. Like you were in the paddock in Miami and Ed Sheeran was there and he saw your Ipswich
Yes.
jersey and you
Yeah,
guys
so this
immediately
was it was pretty
bonded,
shameful
right?
actually. I bought the shirt with me because we had a game on the Saturday that if we won it, we got promoted back to the Premier League. And I heard that Sheeran would be doing a show with El Duncan from ESPN. So I was like, I'm going to bring the shirt, I'm going to wear it, and I'm just going to get a picture because my dad was going to the game. So all my plan was to say to my dad, "You might be going to the game tomorrow, but look at this for a flex. Like, how good is this type thing?" And then it turned out I got the photo, and he turned to me and said, "Where are you watching the game tomorrow?" And I was like, probably just here somewhere." And he said, "Do you want to come watch with me?" And my first reaction, which I'm still embarrassed about, was I was like, "Yeah, yeah, cool, yeah, all right, whatever." Because obviously, like, I'm not going to watch it with him. And then he was like, "No, no, give your details to my manager." Waited 6 long hours, thinking I've just been ghosted. It was worse than internet dating, but dating on an app or something like that. I was like, "Oh, this has gone terribly." Then got the message that evening, which was great. So, and then yeah, watched the game. We got promoted, and he was FaceTiming the players, after the game, which was just surreal. So it was really cool to be in there. Um, and yeah, I think it's probably the peak of my life. I don't think there's ever going to be a day that's as cool as that, which is saying a lot because covering Formula One, obviously, there's some peak moments, but I think I've never had more people message me about anything than that. So that was a kind of good judge of how famous Ed Sheeran is versus F1.
Yeah, that's fair.
Nate, I want to go ahead. Let's flip the script here on Jessica and first ask her to justify the existence of Monaco because a race that Christian Horner, I'm paraphrasing, described as racing in line, promenading, racing in parade. formation for most of the race. Jessica, why was this a compelling race at all?
Yeah, first, it's funny that you made the paint drying analogy because I was painting while I was watching this, and paint literally was drying quicker than laps were going by. But I think if I had, I mean, I think the most obvious reason is because Charles won. If we had to endure that long, borderline strategy-less race for anything, I'm glad it was for Charles breaking both the 13 pole positions without winning curse, the Monaco curse, all of the curses that he had that were things that we all thought about Saturday after qualifying, right? We all thought about like which thing's going to go wrong for Charles before the race ends tomorrow. And fortunately, nothing went wrong for him and he won. So I think the anticipation of watching him win kept me really engaged. There was also a little bit of a race within the race happening with him and the McLarens and the Mercedes and trying to, play with each other in terms of were they going to try to go for a pit at some point? Were the McLarens going to try to make up some seconds that way? Was Charles going to try to go faster? Could he go faster? Was he lying about how much faster he thought he could go? His conversations with the engineers I thought were a little interesting in terms of like some mind games going on. So I was engaged. I was interested. Obviously, the red flag was an interesting way to start that race too. The Alpines fighting, the French television interview by the Alpine team boss about very ominously threatening Esteban Ocon. So I thought all of that was very interesting, and ultimately I thought the result was the most interesting part.
Are you buying it, Nate?
I was going to say you're a better fan than me. I mean, I couldn't have listed all those things at all. But I will give you that Charles winning kind of took away the pain of it a lot. You know, it was if Max had won that race and it had been the same, I think we'd have all collectively been like, I think I'm done with the season. You know,
we wouldn't be doing a podcast right now.
Yeah.
We would have canceled this.
I think you guys would have said, you know what, let's just call this a day. It's been fun. What a ride. Formula One. It was a good time.
Yeah. Tell me more about Ed Sheeran, Nate.
Yeah, exactly. This has become the Ed Sheeran podcast. So that part of it, I agree. But I mean, I went down to the media pen because we were trying to get Ocon after those comments you mentioned, and you can't really see the TV when you're down there if you're in the written pen. And I shouted over to kind of one of the cameramen I know, and I said, "What's going on?" He was like, he just looked back at me, didn't say anything, just shook his head. It was like nothing, literally nothing. And I said, "Really?" And I like walked up to look at the camera, and he was like, "Nothing's changed." And I didn't quite believe it till I got back to the media center. And saw literally nothing like had happened. And somehow I was like, how's Yuki already a minute behind everyone? Like, what's going on? And then realized everyone was just driving super slow. So I think that red flag is important to bring up though. Like without that, I think it just would have been an average race, but that basically just killed the whole thing straight away because they just changed their tires and then basically said, I'm going to go to the end, which that coupled with you can't overtake in Monaco meant if you had track position, you could just go as slow as you wanted. So felt like an extreme version of the Monaco Grand Prix, but by the sounds of it, more of the same for you next year, Jess. Because you like let's just keep
like let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a video of Max and George talking after the race that I want to play because he basically had the same exact thoughts as you, Nate.
Guys,
yeah, you look fresh.
My God, that was terrible. So boring. Yeah. Anyway.
At least it made it a bit more interesting at the end.
Yeah.
My tyres were going though. Like
but they started to clean up a little bit.
Yeah, they did. Like actually pushing on it. I was scared that we were going to lose the tyres by driving so slow.
Yeah. It was okay then. You can't pass. So,
we need to do something. I need to change something for Sunday.
There you go.
Mandatory pit stops. Sorry? Mandatory pit stops. I don't know.
Like 5 or something.
Yeah, 5.
yeah, something.
Yeah.
Or fueling. Yeah, refueling.
Yeah. Mandatory nap. I don't know.
Yeah.
1 lap on foot.
Or a toilet break. I heard that you were.
I needed to go to the toilet. Yeah, it was bad. I went luckily, so it's all good.
Good. Thank you so much.
Well, go on with George.
It's amazing how willing Formula One drivers are to admit they just go, just have a pee in the car, like whenever.
Right, that's
like,
what he meant, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. A lot of them are very proud of the fact they're just like, yeah, just go in the car. And then Lewis is like, it's when you suggest it to him, he's like, that's the most offensive thing anyone could ask him. Do you have a wee in the car? Like, no, of course I don't. And there's Max just like, yeah, of course I did. Why wouldn't I?
That feels on brand for both of them, frankly.
Yeah.
I was just going to. Does Max pee in the car? No look. Yes. I would have guessed.
But
no look.
Interesting to see two guys like that kind of two guys who haven't always seen eye to eye as well, kind of joking around about like we need to change this around. Because I'm pretty sure last time we saw those guys talk, they were like kind of passive aggressively barging past each other in the like in Parc Ferme after a race. I forget when it was.
My question, if they said we need to do something, and I do want to be happy and talk about all of the good Charles Leclerc things. That to me is very easy. The hard question, if there are any answers to it, is what do we do with Monaco? Because no one wants it off the circuit. I think no one, there may be drivers who want it off strictly for competitive qualities or lack thereof. But I don't think anyone who is a fan, a longtime follower, even a short-time follower of the sport, wants Monaco off simply because, and I think it's this simple, it looks so cool. Like, it is the coolest looking track on the entire tour. It is the one with the most associated tradition, and it is the most photogenic. There is no palette like it for F1 to paint on. So what, if anything, can be done to liven up racing here, short of, as they suggested, naps and mandatory pit stops?
Well, I think naps would be quite interesting. You've got a nap for 15 minutes of the race. Like, I don't know how you enforce that even. I think there's two ways. There's two bits to this, right? One is which is what Christian Horner suggested to us on Sunday, is you change the circuit somewhere. You make an overtaking opportunity, whether you widen it somewhere. I'm not sure you can do that because I've actually driven around Monte Carlo when they're building it up, and they literally are using every inch of the road in every place pretty much. So to do that, you're probably going to have to take away a part of the circuit that's kind of already great, and then you're kind of ruining that qualifying spectacle that is so good in Monaco. So I feel like that isn't great. And then a format change is, what do you do? Like, I heard some people say a reverse grid, but I think the issue is you can't pass cars. So all you'd have is a slower processional race around the circuit. I've always wondered, because qualifying is so good, do you hand points out for qualifying as well? Like, you almost kind of reward that session. You say like, and then you've got almost double points at Monaco. You've got a bit like what they do in IndyCar with the Indy 500. Like, that race is weighted in such a way where if you win that race and you qualify well, it really sets your season up nicely. Not sure, fans would like that as much, but we do have sprint races now, and that's kind of, you get a couple points there. So I don't know. I think format has to be the way, because I think you've got to save the circuit. The circuit is just great, and maybe you can make the odd change here and there, and it has changed over time. But I compared it talking to some colleagues. It's a bit like whack-a-mole. I don't know if you guys call it the same, but if you go to the to the carnival and you just hit one and then another one pops up, and I feel like if you started changing Monaco's circuit, you'd start finding problems. You're like, oh, you've just taken out the best bit of the lap, or you've ruined the visuals here, or you've whatever it is. So it's a tough one. So I would lean more towards format change, and then you get towards the argument of, well, you're just making it gimmicky and kind of ruining the weekend. But I think I agree with what George said. Something's got to change on the Sunday, but I'm not I'm happy to admit I'm not smart enough at this point to know what that is. But I feel like, maybe the one they always talk about is mandatory pit stops. That you got to pit a couple times. That means they can push more, because the issue on Sunday as well was it's the big cars, but also they weren't pushing. I think Alex Albon said to us, it was like he said I could have got my Vespa out and driven. Like, instead, it would have been the same experience. And you just don't want to hear that from a Formula One driver, do you? You want them to say, like, you want them to get out of the car and say, I drove my heart out in that race, and I was dicing with the wall every lap. If you had the tires that could do that, then maybe that would be the way. I know tires isn't, always the sexiest thing to throw out into an argument, but for Monaco, maybe it is. Maybe it is the solution.
Who or what is standing in the way of a change when it seems like all the drivers are more or less on board? Lewis Hamilton made similar comments before the race about maybe, different tire compounds. So what is stopping a change there?
So it's primarily has been the organizers for a long time. I think Formula One's been reluctant to make big changes. I think they've kind of left it to the organizers to say, hey, like, if you want to, if you've got anywhere that you can change. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that Monaco is a city state. It's not really Formula One's place to say we're going to extend turn one, because that's down to the Principality of Monaco to work that out. So I think they've been reluctant to do that, and they've always had the idea of, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But a lot of people would turn around and say, well, it might be broke, so let's try and fix it. And I think it's easier for them just to do nothing, to kind of lean on the heritage of the circuit, to lean on the fact that so many people do still love Monaco as it is. But I think that this is the first time I've heard the drivers be so willing to be out there with their opinions. Usually you get like the odd nod and a wink, like, hey, yeah, this isn't great, but hey, it's Monaco. This year, every single driver, even on Thursday, the media day, was like, yeah, this place sucks on Sunday. I like even Lewis and Fernando, and I was like, wow, okay. And then by Sunday, you had like Max saying, in the race, I should have brought my pillow with me and all that stuff. It felt like there'd been a change. So I think that should kind of push the boundary there a little bit. And Christian, in that same press session I mentioned earlier, he said we need to look at this collectively. So I think now they have the teams on board to do that. They've got kind of the will of the drivers. George Russell's head of the GPDA, the union they have for the drivers. So I think if everyone is saying let's change Monaco, suddenly the onus is there. Whereas really before, I think people have just almost passed the buck a little bit, and it feels like this was actually quite a key year for that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that I don't think people realize, that there are races that are either outright owned by Liberty Media and F1, and then there are races like Monaco where there is far less say, and the organization running the sport has far less influence on the decisions they make about the circuit, whether it's competitive or not. Monaco's definitely one of those. You're going to be my focus group, both of you, for my solution. Okay. And it's antithetical to only one real part of the F1 experience. And it's a big part, though. Everyone's talking about changing the circuit. I think you need to change the car. Retro car. If you're
I've heard that. You're not the first person to suggest it.
Good, because it's a great idea.
Don't tell him that.
It just sounds expensive, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, it was a really good idea, and you're the first person I've ever heard say it.
That's brilliant. That is all a man wants to hear, Jessica, about anything.
I got you back. I got you back, Spence. Don't worry.
That's amazing.
I mean, I feel like the easiest solution is like you can't change your tires if there's a red flag in Monaco, or you have to do an extra mandatory. You have to have more than the two tire compounds. But I think that, Spencer, a lot of people prefer your way, which is just have cars that can actually pass each other again.
Tiny car, let's
go
race,
right? Based on qualifying,
basically a glorified kart race. Just take it back. This is not, and it's not something. It's something that has been done within circuits before, not F1, but certainly within other racing circuits, using a different type of car. I'm not saying you go to like straight shaft, all open wheel, open cockpit, death traps. I'm sure there's somebody who just heard that and really thinks it's a good idea. You're an insane person, and I kind of love you for that. And I think there's probably one or two drivers who would really be thrilled to try that. Only one or two, though. I think most of them would be horrified by that notion. But a smaller car.
With this plan, would you still get the points for the Sunday race, or would you lean into the Nate Saunders proposal of points on Sunday and then you just have a fun race? Sorry, points on Saturday. You just have a fun race on Sunday.
I think I love the dual proposal, because anyone who buys a ticket or wants that experience sees qualifying, sees the modern beast on that track, and you get the merging of the modern and the pre-modern, right? And then on Sunday, we do the nostalgia race, and everybody lines up in their little sleds, and you get an actual competitive race where everybody is 13 again. Like that would be my best Monaco. Now, does that somewhat demean the track? No, because real points are still up for grabs, right? You just get them on Saturday, and then you run the Sunday race as a novelty.
The one thing with that is that they already kind of do this 2 weeks before Monaco. They have the Monaco Classic. So when they've already built the circuit, you probably saw Adrian Newey and Zach Brown kind of racing against each other. And it is great. But I think what you notice when there's smaller cars, I mean, it would be different if there's 20 F1 drivers driving them, actually. It would be a lot more fun. Mm-hmm. But you notice with some of those cars, like some of the level in the Monaco Classic, the level of talent is very, very mixed, let's say. So you have one guy like disappearing in the distance, and you have two guys who can barely get through turn one, and you're like, this isn't what I thought I was watching, So I think actually, in that sense, 20 F1 drivers driving like the 1988 cars would be pretty cool.
I mean, Logan Sargent's still out there, so.
Oh, this is meant to be an American podcast. I thought this would be Team Logan.
Yeah. We're pro and anti people that would shock you. This is a Yuki Tsunoda podcast.
We like winners. That's why we like Yuki.
Speaking of next year's drivers who may not be on the grid next year, it's a nice segue. So the Esteban Ocon situation seems tenuous right now. You also published a story on ESPN about Sergio Perez potentially getting close to an extension with Red Bull, and there's also been more rumors this week about Carlos Sainz and where he will end up next year, perhaps Williams. So, of those three drivers, who do you feel the most certain of that they will be on? Their situation will be settled in the next couple of weeks.
So I think Perez's has to be solved for Sainz to solve his. So I think that's the order it's got to be, because I think Sainz is kind of waiting for Perez. So I would just by default say I'm sure Perez will be the first, and then Sainz will follow. Ocon, I don't know what to think anymore. I don't know. I have no idea, what to believe. I mean, you mentioned the Bruno Firmin comments that he made on Canal Plus, and the French journalists in the media center were a couple of rows behind me, and you could hear the moment he said it, because they were like, "Whoa!" like viscerally reacting to it. But I've heard a lot of chat about Esteban looking at other teams. So, Haas, and also if the interesting one for him, I think, and for Pierre Gasly is if Sainz does pick Williams, which it seems increasingly likely he will, you obviously have that great seat open at the Sauber Audi team. And I think one of those guys goes there. So actually, I think all three will be on the grid next season. In terms of timing, though, I think Perez is kind of like the linchpin that once he makes that move, we'll have like a crazy couple of weeks where it's just kind of announcements kind of following each other, because everyone's kind of, I think Sainz in his dream mind is like, I want to go there. And Red Bull are like, nah, like we're happy with this. We'll just keep it. They're still convinced Max is staying long term. Now, I'm not sure whether you guys believe that or not. A lot of people doubt that. But they seem pretty convinced about it. So yeah, that's how I see that. That's how I see that going. Sorry if I didn't answer the question you asked me. I've just realized I just went straight into like a driver market answer rather than a who's going to do it first.
I don't know. I think
No,
you
we could
answered
just
it.
mark the next two questions off. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
It does seem like there's been a bit of like a Red Bull détente for the last few weeks, and I don't know whether to read into that as like they've set aside the public display of differences because Max knows that he just has to get through the season and he'll be gone, or because they've just decided that it's in everyone's best interest just to like, keep going the way they're going, and it's the best place for Max to be. I don't really know. I think I can see the different reads in that for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, it's a good one to pick up on, because a lot of people have read it in different ways. So a lot of people have read it as this is a good thing for, Max staying, and it's a good thing if you think Max is going to leave. I think a lot of it has just been, we had those first 2 weeks, honestly, as a journalist covering Bahrain and Saudi, I've never known two races to be so crazy for news. I mean, every day it was like this team is falling apart in front of us and they're winning by 50 seconds or whatever it was. I was like, I've never seen anything like it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I think as well, the fact that over the course of May, McLaren have got closer, Ferrari have got closer. I think in-house, and obviously, there was the Adrian news, and everyone kind of used that to be like, well, this team is definitely falling apart now. I think there has been a concerted effort within to be like, right, we need to, like, before we could kind of just do this and we were winning races anyway. So I think you're right. I think now they're like, right, we need to take this a bit more, not seriously, because obviously all these F1 teams take it seriously, but our eyes haven't been on the prize so much recently. And actually, I think Max has been Max Verstappen. The more you get to know him, the more you realize he's the ultimate, like, I don't want any of these distractions. All I want to do is race, and then when I'm finished racing, I want to go race on a computer. And when I'm done doing that, I want to go race in real life. Like, so I think Max is just kind of like, if you guys could just stop arguing, that would be great. He's like the kid at the dinner table, like at Thanksgiving, everyone's arguing. He's like, I just want to eat turkey and just go watch TV. Like, can you guys stop? So I think like there's been a lot of that, and I think that common sense seems to be prevailing there a little bit.
All right, we have one other thing to show you before you go, Nate, because I know we are up against time with you. But it concerns George Russell and a tweet of his. If we can go ahead and get that. There we go.
Yeah, so this is a tweet
this is a new one.
of all the George Russell things that he said this year in radio messages. This weekend, I believe, was when he said he was poodling around out there, and that's poodle with a Pootling. And a few of these sayings, if you're not watching this, it's up on screen right now. A few of these are not things that we say here in the States. So can you define a couple of these for us? What is poodling around?
So poodling around, I've used that before. I've got to be honest. Poodling, I think it just is basically what he was doing in Monaco. Just I don't know what the verb to pootle would be in the Oxford Dictionary, but it's just going extremely slowly, kind of pootling. I don't know where that's come from. I've just learned that from my parents.
Like puttering around, perhaps.
Kind of,
like it,
yeah. I think it's come from that, and it's just one of those silly English words that sounds silly, and we say it, and we enjoy saying it. And George Russell saying it, because with the way George Russell says things, was also very enjoyable.
How about fiddly fingers?
Fiddly fingers. That's one of the ones I looked at. I've never heard that. I've never heard fiddly fingers in
So
my
you
life.
just made this one up.
So
that
think,
might be a George Russell original.
It might be, yeah. Yeah. So that was the one. That one I looked and I was like, I don't really. But the rest of them, I kind of. That's how we roll, baby, as well. I was like, that's the least English one of these, because that sounds like something.
That's a Midwest dad. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
American.
exactly.
That's my dad when he signs the check at a restaurant. He says, "Ready to rock and roll," and we all stand up and leave. That's yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that is by the way the one that sounds weirdest coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, that's how we roll, baby.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit like Austin Powers, doesn't it?
Yeah. I was about to say that.
Yeah.
There's a few good ones there. I mean, Wowzer. I don't know if has that not made it across the pond. I think Wowzers are great.
It's again like I wouldn't say that it's used often, but if there is a middle-aged dad George Russell overlap, I think, with Wowza.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. And crikey and blimey, I always kind of took as like Australian slang words.
Well, crikey is, but I think blimey is definitely English.
Okay. You're right.
But
You're right.
yeah, like blimey. I grew up in Essex, and you hear a lot of blimey. Blimey is kind of one of the big words. What I will say as well is ifs and buts and carrots and nuts. I have heard lots of variations of that. People change the last carrots and nuts to different things. Some of them I don't want to, disgrace your podcast by saying. So there's lots of different variations of those things. And oh my word as well is, and one thing that should be on there is to be fair, because I think he says that all the time, and I've noticed I say that on a regular basis, like an English throwaway thing, like, well, to be fair, and then you just say something that you didn't
say something that isn't fair. Yeah,
you didn't need to caveat it with that. Yeah.
But very educational.
No, I think we reviewed the entire George Russell lexicon.
Silly buggers. I like silly buggers.
Yeah, silly buggers. Silly buggers is great. I mean, and that one you can, like, if you're driving on the motorway and it's like, oh, they were playing silly buggers in front of us. It means two drivers are just kind of like they're both driving in a completely ridiculous way. I mean, you don't even have to be on the road for that. It just means it kind of. It does what it says on the tin is another English phrase. Like, do you guys say that?
I like that.
That's one of my favorite ones. One day I'm going to do a show where I just talk to an American and just say English phrases that I just use and then get the laugh out of them, because I really enjoy it.
I volunteer as tribute. I love that.
Hear English phrases for the first time.
My mom had a good one, Nate, which came from somebody that she was working at her shop, and she had a lady from, I believe, Yorkshire, who described two guys who were both the same kind of freewheeling kind of dude. Said, yeah, those are two cheeks off the same ass. yeah, that's a good one. And also, a quick secret about England: the further north you get in England, the better their phrases get like that. So, in London you do get Cockney rhyming slang, which is a whole other episode. But the further north you get, the more their phrases just become absolute poetry. It's probably why, Shakespeare did his best writing when he was up north, for example. He just made it up as he went. Because just hearing all kinds of crazy things. All right, Nate, you got to go. We appreciate your time as always. Thank you for joining us, and go poodle along.
Go text Ed, tell him we said hi.
Yeah,
will do. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it as always.
Bye. It was nice to have Nate join us. I'm a little disappointed he didn't agree with my take on Monaco, but it really was a perfect storm this year because of the safety car in the first lap. The drivers were able to change their tires and then go long for the entire rest of the race. No passing. Pretty much whatever position you were in after the restart, you finished in. Carlos Sainz got lucky too, by the way. We should mention it was like the first weekend maybe ever where there was double Ferrari luck, because he was able to restart even after he got a puncture and probably would have been out of the race had there not been a red flag and they had not allowed him to go back to his starting grid position. But I know a lot of fans thought it was really boring, and that's fine. I just think that it was boring, and yet it was still exciting because I got to anticipate watching Charles Leclerc win, which is really emotional. I think like as emotional as the Lando Norris win was, being his first win in F1, like I think this somehow topped that because it was his home race and all the feelings and all of the close shaves he's had there, almost winning, and then something drastically terrible happened. That didn't happen this year. So yeah, it was boring, but I'm very happy for Charles, and I loved getting to see the video of him jumping into the marina with Fred Vasseur.
A superb dive, a perfect dive. Fred
Yes,
Vasseur needs to work on
such a
form,
good dive.
but he's doing everything else so well.
Well,
recently.
Charles
He's got
did
the
push him
momentum.
in, to be fair.
Yeah, to be expected. Also, you get to do that when you win. Good things. Charles wins, talks about his dad, gets emotional. Really wonderful moment to win at home for him. Double Ferrari luck. Buy your lottery tickets now, right? Don't walk around with anything metal in your pockets because lightning could strike any of us at any moment if Ferrari has had double Ferrari luck. Bad. Monaco, beautiful, tiny, big cars. Big cars, tiny roads. You want to know what the problem is? Big car, tiny road, can't pass. There. Sometimes it's a very simple sport, and that is the big problem with a lot of extremely complex solutions.
And also just the entire race was tire management, because if you
Yeah.
started on mediums and switched to hards during the red flag, you just raced the entire race on the same set of tires. And there was like I mentioned earlier, like a slight possibility that maybe Piastri would try a pit and try to do the undercut, or one of the
Yeah.
other drivers would and try to get a position, but I think they probably made the right call. They held on to second place, and the Ferraris weren't able to finish with the 1-2, which probably would have happened if that were the case, based on how quickly Charles was towards the end of the race. But even Leclerc, I mean, all the drivers were like, yeah, it was like pretty brutal out there. We were kind of bored. It's almost harder to go slow because you're like mentally more susceptible to like just zoning out and making a mistake, which of course the consequences are devastating when you're that close to the walls in Monaco. So still, I mean, credit where it's due. He outqualified everyone and totally earned that win. But yeah, definitely were less variables in play because of that horrible crash on the first lap with Perez and Magnussen.
Yeah. We're going to do a very brief lad of the day. And this lad of the day is not a driver. I know that we all want to sing the praises of Charles Leclerc. I know. But in an unprecedented move, I thought we would go ahead and give the lad of the day to somebody who got to do some work, on the day, got a lot of screen time, and I don't think gets enough respect for the work that they do at Monaco due to the lack of competitive interest. I have to salute the hard work that's being done overall by one Monaco Crane. That's right, Monaco Crane. All you do is reach down and keep the track clear. No one respects you. No one pays you the necessary compliments. All you do is dependably reach over the wall, pluck a ruined Red Bull, shredded from a collision on the first lap of a race that they should be able to complete. Thank you, K-Mag. That's right. Can we fix it? Yes, we can. Thanks to the good work of the Monaco Crane. The lad of the day, the Monaco Crane.
I couldn't agree. Wow, so deserving. The marshals did such a great job cleaning that up.
That's right.
Perez's
Brooms?
car looked like a shell of itself. It was just like a little like carcass with no wheels after that, and somehow everyone walked away and was fine. And that crane, like you said, Spencer, just like the claw in Toy Story.
But like the
came
claw
in
in Toy
there
Story, right?
And plucked it right out, and we
I
got
go
to
to a better
restart the
place.
race.
Which is the hauler. And they will strip me for parts and use me for other parts on the new car. Yes. I think that wraps up all of my thoughts I have on Monaco. We're in a weird spot on the calendar right now, and weird for a number of different reasons. One, the big three right now atop the Constructors' Championships are, as everybody projected, Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren. And in a tighter formation than one might expect, especially between the top two, Red Bull with 276 and Ferrari just behind them at 252. I know, still relatively early in the season. Red Bull clearly still the most dominant team working, but Ferrari starting to put up consistent, hey, 2 4s, top 4s, top 5s, not just lurking, but starting to really consistently dominate their spot and occasionally, yes, challenge Red Bull for outright wins. We've seen it twice in the past month, and we're going to continue to see it because that is a team doing everything right, as well as McLaren, who at 184, not exactly in the championship discussion, but very real improvement, staging towards a better 25 and 26 with, as we've said, the most harmonious matching of two young drivers on the grid, guys who they will both happily hang on to as long as they can.
Yeah, and hey, shout out to Ferrari. You can't screw up your strategy if the strategy gets taken out of the equation. So we talked last week about how a few things happening the last couple weeks maybe is going to lead to some interesting summer racing, some interesting things happening down the stretch here before summer break. And I feel like we're still kind of setting up that way. Max has been struggling a little bit with his Red Bull. He's not super happy with it. He is having some problems with understeer and with grip. And so as the other drivers are closing the gap, their Red Bull problems that, they've existed before are now being, I think, more exposed. They're now mattering more because it's not an instant win by 26 seconds, despite the fact that the car's not working perfectly for him. So I'm not willing to say that the results will be different this year, but I am very intrigued, and I think already this has been a really, really interesting Formula One season. Also, if you are a fan of not just Formula One, but other motorsport series, what a day Sunday. One of the most boring Monaco Grand Prix of all time, followed by like a 5-hour rain delay.
Followed up by a 5-hour rain delay in the Indy 500. The Purdue band getting stuck under the track in the tunnel during some severe weather.
Stupid drum deserved it.
16 different leaders. 16 different leaders in the Indy 500. A flip on the entire script of Monaco in terms of what you could expect from an event. A really cool race if you got a chance to watch it. Ultimately, when you have those kind of cars doing that kind of speed around a track that big and that wide, you get these crazy overtakes, and it comes down to when you're going to call someone's bluff and do it on the last lap. Pato Award went one turn too early and thus gave the lead back on the final turn to Josef Newgarden, last year's winner and a repeat winner of the Indy 500. I know, he's already won it, but he gets very excited and he jumps into the crowd. I'll always rock with the dude who jumps into the crowd.
I think if you want to cry today, you should watch some of those post-race interviews with Pato Award. McLaren, I believe, finished in second in Indy 500, Formula One, and Formula E on Sunday, right? That was Sunday. I don't know what day of the week it is. A 3-day weekend, but that's tough to do. It's like the triple crown of near misses.
It is, and in terms of a total miss, Haas came very close to having nobody finish either race, but did have one of their cars finish the 500. So out completely at Monaco, had an early crash had an early DNF at the 500. But Haas, you were so close. You were so close to the perfect futility. You know
who else was close? So close to something? Kyle Larson. He tried to race in 2 races in the same day, and guess what? It rained. Couldn't do it. Yeah.
It is very fun, by the way, watching somebody learn how to drive an Indy car and to do that race in real time, because the announcers were calling out things like, yeah, he didn't know he's not supposed to do that. First time. They just have him out there and he's doing great, right. But like occasionally he'd do something and they were like, yeah, he doesn't know he's not supposed to do that.
Whatever happened to taking the car into like a big empty parking lot of a movie theater on the weekend and giving it a spin? That's what we did back in my day when you were learning how to drive. You couldn't find a big parking lot for him.
I was just in Indianapolis this past weekend, and let me tell you, they've got some parking lots you can do that in. So
Exactly.
no excuses. No excuses, Kyle
No
Larson.
excuses. Okay,
None.
2 more things before we go. First thing, Lewis Hamilton will be on Hot Ones this week, which we will be reviewing in full
All over.
on the next episode of DNF. Second thing, we found out a few drivers' favorite movies this weekend, courtesy of Luke Smith. Should we just go through these one by one? I mean,
Yes.
some truly shocking things. Okay, Esteban Ocon, The Dark Knight Rises.
Sure.
Interesting
I think
choice.
that's a lot more understandable after this weekend.
Maybe he's a Steelers fan. Who's to say?
Mm-hmm.
Yuki Tsunoda, Transporter. I haven't seen Transporter, but please tell me why this makes you giggle so much.
Because it's a movie about a guy who drives fast and is a badass, and that's about all you need to know. It's a Jason Statham movie. It's the Jason Statham movie.
You know what? Jason Statham, all you need to say. I know exactly what this movie's plot is. I know everything that happens in it.
I know
and
Yuki
I know it's
watches
not
it.
for me.
Right. I know that Yuki watches it and he goes, I'm the transporter. That's exactly what happens.
Okay, George Russell, Casino Royale. He thinks he's James Bond.
He does think he's James
that.
Bond,
If you've ever seen what he has worn to Wimbledon
Mm-hmm.
over the past few years, like this man, that completely tracks. Completely
Yes.
tracks. Verstappen, Wolf of Wall Street, or The Hangover. Also, like that tracks. That definitely tracks. He's just like loving all the bro movies. I do like Wolf of Wall Street, but The Hangover to me, it was fine when I was in high school. Not a movie that I think I'd watch again.
Oh, Max Verstappen disagrees, bro.
He loves it.
Loves
And the juxtaposition between that and the next one I think is hilarious
Mm-hmm.
because Alex Albon says his favorite movie is Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yes. Yes. The guy who most looks like he could be in a Wes Anderson movie, in fact, is a fan of Wes Anderson movies, and that to me is sublime.
Yes, I love that answer. And then last but not least, our Monaco GP race winner, the one and only Charles Leclerc, Harry Potter. That doesn't specify which Harry Potter.
He just said Harry Potter. He just said genre. It's like a whole series and canon of movies. I'm a big fan.
I love it. Well,
Which I get because I would probably answer like Mad Max. And they'd
Is
go,
that
well,
your
that's a
favorite-
movie. And I was
is
like,
that
no,
your
any
favorite
of them.
movie?
I would watch any of them right now.
have you seen
put them on.
Furiosa?
I have.
Was it good?
It was incredible. It was incredible. All brook, no criticisms because a man, first of all, a lot of things going vroom and fast. Tons of things going vroom and fast. And also a guy at one point grabs a batch of dynamite and does a backsplash onto a car while yelling, "Witness me," and blows the whole thing up. And that to me, that's cinema. So I'm 100. Like once that happened, I was like, oh, I'm past the point of critical like threshold. I love this movie.
Anya Taylor-Joy was at the race this weekend, and she is, of course, the star of the film. So there's a nice little F1 tie-in.
I was very disappointed that she did. Very disappointed she did not run anyone over with the semi truck. That's because I've seen her do that. She's really
I
good
haven't
at it.
seen the movie yet, and I also never saw Fury Road because the trailer looked so scary that I just can't. I'm too scared to watch it. But
Yeah,
I
don't
did
watch
see-
it if that scared you. Don't.
The trailer's terrifying. I know I've read the plot on Wikipedia several times.
The plot is we went there and we come back. That's the whole thing.
Pretty much. It's kind of like Monaco. My favorite Mad Max thing this weekend was if I were in Mad Max, this would be my rig, and it was the Vanessa Carlton playing the piano in 1,000 Miles music video.
Somehow George Miller could make that menacing. I have absolutely
I believe
no
that.
doubt.
I put it in the desert, and I'm like, ooh, spooky.
Yeah, but if the
Hot
trailer
there.
scared you, don't ever see Fury Road.
All right.
Have you ever eaten an entire large pizza and then just like immediately went to sleep and had the most vivid nightmares of your life? That's what
Yes,
every Mad Max.
surprisingly, yeah. That yeah. I'm good. My
Yeah.
boyfriend loves that movie, and I'm like, you know what? You can watch that.
No, you don't
on your
need to.
own. I'm gonna
Yeah.
watch Challengers again. By the way,
That's right.
Love that.
If you would
movie.
like to watch something soothing, in 2 weeks we have the Villeneuve circuit. It will be soothing and will feature very, very little passing. But we will be doing a show in between then to get everyone ready for that and undoubtedly discuss whatever Lewis Hamilton says and does on Hot Ones. I believe in you, Lewis. I know you made it to the last one.
I'm looking forward to that.